Hello and welcome to today's webinar on preparing forms for your NSF AT proposal. This webinar is offered by Mentor Connect, a leadership and outreach project for ATE. Today, we will provide guidance for completing all required forms in research.gov, the NSF platform for online grants management. Please be reminded, however, that we are not speaking on behalf of the National Science Foundation. The opinions we express are our own, and we will share information from NSF publications as well as from conversations with program officers and our own experience. So now I'd like to introduce our presenters for today. My name is Emery DeWitt. I am the project manager and co-principal investigator for Mentor Connect. We have Lewis McIntyre, serves as senior personnel and mentor for the Mentor Connect project. We have Pamela Sillers, who is principal investigator for Mentor Connect, and Matthew Swenson, who is the grants director for Green River College and a mentor fellow leader for Mentor Connect. So now let's see who is here today. I'm going to start this first poll here. We would like to find out a little more about who's in the audience today. The poll will help us determine how many of you are connected in some way to Mentor Connect. And as you can see, we are delighted to have so many of our Mentor Connect participants in the audience today. We also extend a special welcome to the other participants that are here with us. If you are not already working directly with Mentor Connect or another AT mentoring initiative to help you prepare a more competitive NSF AT proposal, we would encourage you to investigate those opportunities. So, getting started, if you haven't already done so, please use the chat box to introduce yourself and let us know if there are any other viewers in the room with you. If you have any questions during the entire webinar, just please ask them in the chat. We will have question breaks during the webinar, and we'll also answer some questions in the chat. Most of you have been Zooming for a long time now, but remember, you can change your view in the upper right-hand corner. All right, just a few things of what you need to know. Registered participants will receive a link to the webinar recording. We'll also receive an email with attachments that are shared in the chat. The link and chat attachments are typically ready within 3 workdays of the broadcast. However, it could take up to 1 week. There will also be a tutorial based on the webinar or a quick reference guide that is published in the resource library of mentor-connect.org. The quick reference guide will include the PowerPoint slides with annotated text. If you would like to receive a certificate of completion for attending the webinar, please email mentor-connect@fdtc.edu. Make sure you include your name as you would like it to appear on the certificate and identify which webinar you attended, in this case, the Forms webinar. So throughout the webinar, there will be slides with this takeaway icon. If the slide has this icon, this means that these are success tips from the Mentor Connect team. So now I'm going to turn it over to Pam, who will talk about the agenda for today's webinar. Pam?
Thank you, Emery. In this webinar, we'll provide an overview of proposal forms that would need to be completed, share information about how to navigate and do this work in research.gov, and highlight specifics about completing each required form. At the end, we will request your feedback for the purpose of evaluation and project improvement. This graphic provides an overview of what we will be discussing today. You can see from the diagram that the heart of any proposal is a project description. We will share some information about the primary project description, but that isn't our primary emphasis today. Also, there are some important proposal items that we will not be discussing in detail today. These are highlighted in green boxes. These components of a proposal will be covered in separate webinars that Mentor Connect will provide on April 30th and May 21st. So, what are we discussing today? The cover sheet, project data form, facilities, equipment, and other resources form, references cited, data management and sharing plan, list of collaborators and other affiliations, single copy documents, and the supplemental documents, which are somewhat like the appendices to the proposal. Each item serves a specific purpose, and we will walk you through each one so that you will understand what is required. I thought an example might help you understand why forms are not a trivial part of your grant proposal. The numbers in this example are from an actual project proposal that was submitted to ATE. The full proposal was 86 pages long. Of the 86 pages, the project description filled 15 pages, which is maximum allowable length. The project summary is restricted to 1 page. Budget forms for a 3-year project will take up to 4 pages, which is a budget for each year and a cumulative budget page for the entire proposal. The budget justification filled 3 pages in this example, although NSF allows up to 5 pages for your budget justification. I cannot do that word justification. So far then, we've accounted for 23 pages of the proposal. That means forms and supplementary documents make up the other 61 pages, or 71% of this sample proposal. That's no small amount of work, so you should start working on these forms right away. They take some time, and you need to be preparing them very thoughtfully and carefully. There are 2 resources that you should refer to over and over again: the Advanced Technological Education Program Solicitation and the Proposal and Award Policies and Procedure Guides, known by the acronym PAPPG or PAPG or other ways people try to abbreviate it. The current program solicitation is 24-584. We recommend that you print it out, read it, and have the solicitation handy when you prepare your proposal. This advice applies to faculty who serve as principal investigators, as well as to grant professionals and the AOR who will have final responsibility for proposal submission at your institution. The current version of the PAPG is 24-1. While the PAPG covers everything you know to submit and manage a proposal at any division of the NSF Science Foundation, it also includes other information. I don't recommend that you print it out. It would take up probably 2 or 3 toner cartridges. Instead, refer to what you need to. And do know, though, that the ATE solicitation is the one that's really critical to ensure that you meet all the requirements specific to the ATE program. And before I continue, I am going to put the 2 links to the PAPPG and the solicitation in the chat so that if you have not gotten them, you can see both of those in the chat right now. NSF updates the PAPPG regularly, so make sure that you're referring to the most current version. The PAPG includes a proposal preparation section, which is section 2. This contains information that is critical to your proposal writing, such as allowable font sizes, margins, and specific requirements for the proposal components. A new version, 26-1, is scheduled to be released later this year. We'll let you know when the changes become effective and if any of them affect your October 2025 submission. The PAPG is available on the NSF.gov website, and if you go to research.gov and type 24-1, you will be able to pull it up. You can also sign up online to receive publications from NSF. Once you do this, then you'll be notified when new documents such as the PAPPG are released. Before you think about forms and before you start working on them, there is preliminary work you must do. First of all, you must know who serves as your AOR or authorized organizational representative for your college. In order to register your institution, you must have an AOR. I helped one college who had registered with NSF more than 5 years previously, and the registered AOR had left the college. So it is possible that your college is in the system, but the AOR needs to be updated, and this can take time. The registration is a one-time activity. If your institution isn't yet registered, register in the research.gov system. You will also need to register or add to the system your principal investigator, the co-principal investigators, and senior personnel for your project. You want to check the login information to make sure all the identified people have been properly registered in the system. Then, as you complete project components, you can upload and save them in research.gov, where editing or document replacement is easy. Nothing is final until the AOR clicks the Submit button to transmit the proposal to NSF. Before you begin working, as you begin working in research.gov, I recommend starting with the data management form. You can upload it to make sure everything's working correctly, and then you can edit it later as needed. You want to make sure the login information is working sooner instead of later. If you have problems, NSF is amazing with their technical support. However, the closer to the submission date, the busier they get. Some people who have experience with federal grants might be tempted to use grants.gov. Do not do this. Let me repeat again. Do not use grants.gov. You should use research.gov. Why? First of all, it is fast and easy to use wizard, and it has an expanded compliance check which gives you immediate compliance feedback when you upload each section. The PDFs are not altered when you submit them, so you don't have to worry about those strange symbols that can get inserted in your document. And there are on-screen references to the relevant sections of the PAPG. When you click on a reference, it takes you to that section automatically. So again, use research.gov to submit your AT grant to make use of these features. To get started, you'll open research.gov and click Sign in the upper right-hand corner. You'll then see a sign-in screen where you will enter your login and password. Note that under the sign-in, there's a link to create an account if you have not already done so. Starting in October 2024, NSF requires the use of multi-factor or MFA to log in. If you haven't logged into research.gov ever or lately, I encourage you to do so as soon as possible and get your MFA set up. If you can't log into research.gov, you can't do any of the work you need to do. Many of you have never used research.gov before. There is a demo site, and I encourage you to check it out. Become familiar with the site, so when you're ready to submit your proposal, you're going to be able to do it. After you log in, you are going to see a screen similar to the one shown here. Under Proposals, select Prepare and Submit Proposals. When logging into the first time, you might see a pop-up that asks you if you want to continue to the proposal system. Click and the pop-up goes away. Next, in the Prepare New box, select Full Proposal. Of course, after you've started working on your proposal, you would select In Progress box to access your previous work. Next, you need to select the NSF solicitation that applies. You want the Advanced Technological Solicitation. Funding opportunities are listed by the solicitation number. As previously stated, the current solicitation is 24-584. Right now, that's on page 5 of the solicitation list, but this will change. As new solicitations are added, the NSF solicitation will move down on the list. Look at the numbers and scroll until you find the specific solicitation for the ATE program, and make sure you select it. I can't imagine selecting the wrong solicitation, which would make everything else that you do wrong for your proposal. To help you, the next thing you'll see is a verification screen. Make sure that the Advanced Technological Education is listed for the solicitation and for the program. If so, everything else on this screen is correct. If your screen does not have the Advanced Technological Education, use the previous button and correct your selection. Next, you will select the proposal type. All ATE proposals are designated as research. This seemed a little bit strange to me because I think of myself as a faculty at a community college. I'm not necessarily doing research. So when I did my first proposal, I scrolled up and down trying to determine what the right thing was to select. Well, let me tell you, the right thing to select is research. You are doing research and you select this option. The next screen shows additional proposal details. Most of you will be submitting a single proposal. You'll also provide the proposal title. When you are creating your title, NSF does not want you to get too cutesy. If you think about it, you've heard of somebody complaining about federal funding that was given to a project, and the complaints are often based on a cutesy or misleading name. You want to have a title that defines what you're doing, so don't try to come up with an acronym and make the name match. Create a name that is clear and reflective of what you're doing. And you are able to change the title or edit it after you go past this point. So if you have a working title and change it, you can edit it. When you click the Prepare Proposal button, you get the control page, which lists all the things you need to complete. This is absolutely wonderful. These are hot links, which means when you click on the cover sheet, it's going to take you to the cover sheet. Under the compliance status, if the words form not checked appears, that means that this is a proposal component, is a form that is going to be completed within the research.gov site. If it has document unavailable for check, this indicates that this is a proposal component that is a document that you will create and upload. When you upload a document, compliance information on that item is automatically provided. The center column shows the date you last updated the item. During this webinar, we're going to take you step by step through the items you need to complete. You will notice at the bottom of the list is for mentoring students. In most cases, you will not be completing this form. Covering the project description is beyond the scope of this webinar, but we wanted to give you a quick overview. Your project description is the heart of your proposal. It should clearly state and justify your plan to action. This means you need to include information on the project's motivating rationale, goals, objectives, deliverables, and activities, as well as incorporating a timetable, management plan, the roles and responsibilities of the PI, co-PIs, and other senior personnel, a plan for sustainability after the period of NSF funding ends, an evaluation, and a dissemination plan, all in 15 pages. Instead of launching straight into your narrative, first create an outline with sections, headings, and key points. Then you can add tables or charts, such as your timetable, before writing narrative text. This will help your proposal to be clear and concise. We wanted to share a few additional points about your project description. These items might seem like no-brainers, but they're actually crucial to the success of your proposal. The project description must begin with a section entitled Results from Prior NSF Support. If the PI and co-PI have no prior support, you still need to include this section listing and list that you have no prior results to share. This is also a place where you can mention that you were part of Mentor Cohort, for most of you, Mentor Connect Cohort 13. If the PI or co-PI identified in the project have received NSF funding, they need to provide this information in this section. If they've received funding from other sources, such as the Department of Labor, and these awards pertain to the scope of work they're seeking to undertake in the proposal, it's helpful to include, but not required. This subsection must include specific outcomes and results, including metrics to demonstrate the impact of past projects' activities. You'll want to pay close attention to addressing intellectual merit and broader impacts of the review criteria. The project description must also include a section with the narrative labeled Broader Impacts, where you can address the broader impacts of your proposed work. And the heading must be on its own line and make it easy for reviewers to find. And you must include a subsection entitled Evaluation Plan, where you will detail information on aspects of the planned evaluation that addresses your project's implementation and achievement of outcomes, specific sources of data, and collection metrics. State how those data will be used and describe how evaluation data will improve the project. It is recommended that the project evaluator be named in the project description if possible. For more information, including checklist and resources for developing AT evaluation plans for your proposal, see the specific resources in the Mentor Connect resource library, or watch webinars offered by Evaluate that were hosted by Mentor Connect in February and March. The project description must be self-contained. It can include URLs or direct readers to proposal information on external sites. Including this information circumvents the 15-page limitations, and the sites could be altered between submission and review. And you will upload the project description as a PDF. It's always a good idea to print your proposal after you have uploaded it, so you can see how it appears in the system and give it a final once-over. Ideally, share the proposal with someone external to your department and ask for their critical review. Use section headings bullets, or charts to ensure clear proposal readability, and visuals must be included in that 15-page limitation. Although these are listed as takeaways for the project description, they really do apply to your entire proposal. Pay attention to the format, font size, font layout, etc. of your document. These are requirements, not recommendations. Personally, I love the font Trebuchet. I use it for everything. It is not on the approved list of fonts for an NSF proposal. So I had to look at the approved fonts and use those. Make sure you look at those lists, which are part of the PAPG. Don't rely on past proposals for guidance. These might not meet the current standards or might have been submitted before there were NSF guidelines relating to fonts. Remember that the project description has to fit on 15 pages. Other things also have page limitations, and you are required to have 1-inch margins on all sides. The PAPG does allow for a minimum font of 10 points for some things such as Arial or Courier. However, we recommend that you use 11 or 12-point font to ensure readability. And this is where you want to look at the PAPG, because if you're using Times New Roman, you must use at least an 11-point font. Keep in mind that reviewers may be reading up to 12 proposals, and you might be the last one they're reading at night. Proposals that are difficult to read or comprehended, do not clearly respond to all the instructions in the solicitation and the PAPPG, or are poorly written, might not be rated well. And this is a new one, for example, that as we tell you, look at the current requirements, is you do not add page numbers to your project description or any other part of your project now. The system, research.gov, does that for you automatically. So again, after uploading, print and proofread another time. Mark your calendars for these webinars. We will be covering the budgets on April 30th, and we will be covering key personnel on May 21st. And those webinars do start at 3 p.m. Eastern Time on a Wednesday. So we look forward to continuing as we talk about these items. But what are we covering? You might be going, okay, told all the things you're not covering. So what are we covering today? We're covering the cover sheet, the project summary, references cited, facilities, equipment, and other resources, data management and sharing plan, and the project data form, as well as other documents, which are really the letters of collaboration. So Matthew, why don't I let you get started on the cover sheet?
Sure, thanks, Pam. To get started with your proposal, on the navigation page, click on the first hot link to access the cover sheet. The cover sheet provides NSF administrative details and data that are required for a proposal. This is where you'll request your project start date and indicate the proposed length for your project. You'll also be asked to report the Institutional Review Board, referred to as IRB, status for your project. Importantly, the cover sheet is where the college provides verifications and certifications that are required to become a grantee institution. Two important decisions you need to make and report on the cover sheet are your requested start date and the duration of your project. The most frequently requested ATE project start dates are June 1st, July 1st, and September 1st. Your business office may prefer a July 1st start date, so the grant budget year aligns with the fiscal year at your college. However, if your project involves faculty who are not on contract in the summer, you might want to choose September 1st as your start date, so you have personnel on board at the start of the project. You may choose other start dates, but be cautious in doing so. Your requested start date should be the first day of the month you choose. Keep in mind that requesting an earlier start date will have no impact at all on when your grant award is made. You can't speed up the funding process by requesting an earlier start date. The other selection you'll make on the cover sheet is the duration of your project. ATE grants may be for 2 or 3 years, but we recommend you request 3 years or 36 months. This gives you maximum flexibility to implement your grant. If you conclude your work early, you can always close out the grant early. Keep in mind that you need to select either 24 or 36 months. Grants are not made for time increments of less than 2 years. It's not essential to respond to every question on the cover sheet. Some questions aren't applicable to ATE proposals. One cover sheet question, for example, is only for prospective grantees that are not colleges or universities. Another is an inquiry about submission of the same proposal to another government entity. Community colleges rarely, if ever, do this. Your college's information is provided in this section of the cover sheet. In this section right here, you'll be asked about the status of an IRB review of your proposal. We recommend that you indicate this review is pending. However, if your college already has an IRB and your proposal is reviewed and a determination letter is issued prior to proposal submission, you may submit this information with your proposal. It's important to understand that an IRB determination letter will be required before NSF can make a grant award to your institution. IRB requirements and language about IRBs can be confusing. With IRB determinations, being exempt does not mean that no IRB review is required. It takes one level of IRB review of your proposal to determine if you're exempt. No proposal is wholly exempt from IRB review. Should a proposal not be considered exempt at the first level of review, then all members of the IRB must review the proposal and other guidelines kick in. There are 8 categories of research that qualify for exemption from coverage by the Regulations for Protection of Human Research Subjects. Keep in mind that all NSF grant-funded work is considered research. ATE projects typically fall in the exempt category based on the basic HHS policy for protections of human research subjects, subpart A, subsection 46.104, parenthesis 1, parenthesis, which covers educational settings, and subsection 46.104, parenthesis 2, parenthesis, that deals with educational tests, survey procedures, observation of behavior, etc. Review by the IRB chair will determine if your proposal falls into at least one of these 8 categories. If so, your proposal can be declared exempt from further IRB review. The IRB chair can then issue a determination letter. We encourage setting up an IRB at your college instead of relying on another institution to provide IRB review of your proposal. If you're a MentorConnect participant and your institution doesn't have an IRB, talk with your MentorConnect mentor, as there are resources available. MentorConnect provides guidance on how to establish an IRB and how to train those who will serve on your board. We also have sample templates for submitting your proposal to the IRB for review and a sample determination letter that's required from that review. Since establishing an institutional policy and procedure is required to establish an IRB, your college should do this well in advance of the time your proposal will be considered for an award. Also, if your ATE project may involve the resources or interests of a federally recognized American Indian or Alaskan tribal nation, you must check the box entitled Potential Impacts on Tribal Nations at the bottom of the screen. This includes planning to reference a tribal nation in materials, public forums, or publications. You don't have to submit written confirmation of the tribal nation's approval with your ATE proposal. However, you must at least enclose with your proposal a copy of a written request for approval that you submitted to the tribal nation. If your proposal is recommended for funding, you'll need to send NSF documentation of the tribal nation's approval before NSF will make an award decision. As Pam mentioned earlier, research.gov has an effective auto-check system. It'll prevent you from omitting critical information. The sample error message shown on this screen appeared because I failed to enter my project start date on this form. The system flags this type of omission or error, which is comforting. These compliance checks in research.gov will be your friend. On this slide and the next, you'll see what a proposal cover sheet looks like when it's produced by research.gov. The red arrow points to your unique proposal number that will be generated by the system. On this sample, personal information has been redacted. The final cover sheet page shows the location of the required college sign-off for the proposal. This must be done by your authorized organizational representative, or AOR. In completing the cover sheet, again, choose the most generous project length available. We recommend 36 months. And carefully select your start date. We recommend July 1st, which for most projects is neither too early or too late. In 2024, however, a number of proposals were funded after July 1st, some as late as the end of September. In a case like this, where the proposed start date is earlier than the actual award date, NSF will work with you to push back the start date of the project to align with the date the project will be funded. This doesn't happen often, but it can happen. Your AOR must sign off on the proposal. Your proposal will not be accepted without this college authorization. Now Lewis is going to talk about the project data form.
Okay, great. Thank you, Matthew. And so now we are back to the navigation page, and we'll move down to the project data form. The project data form is where you will choose the ATE funding track for your proposal. You'll notice a drop-down menu is provided. It is important that you choose the right option. Most of you will choose track 1 or track 2. You will notice the screen currently shows the old project track names, and this has been reported to NSF and should be fixed in the near future. Now notice this is important information that guides everything from funding limits to how your proposal is placed for review. Ask if you have questions about which funding track to select. Now you'll be asked to select your project category from a drop-down list. Most of you will select one of the project options. You might have overlap, so pick the one that is the main focus of your proposal. The information on your organization should be quite straightforward. If you select yes for additional organizations, you will then be asked to provide additional information. Any organization external to your college that will be involved in your project in some way should be listed. This includes subaward organizations if you have any. Partners become increasingly important when you move from your first project to subsequent funding. And so organizations listed should be committed to contributing to your project in some way. So we encourage you to include commitment letters from each organizational partner you list on this form, and make certain that the organization and their contributing role is also clearly described in the proposal. The choices for project discipline are generic categories and may not be a perfect fit for your project. So pick the one you think is a reasonable fit for your project. Program officers will also use other information to provide you help and ensure your proposal is placed appropriately for review. So don't worry about the NSF strategic areas. If your project will not likely align with one of the areas for the NSF ATE program, this won't impact your chances of funding. Again, for primary focus, select the item that best matches. For many projects, it will be the lower division undergraduate. If the project focuses on one strategic area in the list, select it. Otherwise, just leave it blank. The sections of the data form on this slide are elements of your project that contribute to broader impacts. So for example, all ATE projects should be able to check connecting with business and industry as a project feature. After all, having tight connections to industry is core DNA for ATE. Likewise, you should be able to select yes for private sector participation for the same reason. So now think carefully about your audiences and the potential impact your project will have on different groups. Benefits can and yet they should cascade. You may work with 12 teachers in a workshop, but your goal is for each of those teachers to take activities and new knowledge back to their classrooms where a much larger number of students will benefit. So you need to estimate the numbers for each applicable category of participants and keep a record of your calculations. You're going to need this later on and somewhere else in the proposals. So proposals have been declined. I'll mention that again. Proposals have been declined due to a lack of information in this area, with the main issue pointed out by reviewers being that the proposals did not estimate any impact on students. If the proposal talks about students, reviewers look at the potential impact numbers you indicate on the proposal, and the numbers should definitely not be zero. Reviewers have even been known to do a cost per student calculation based on the projected impact and the amount of funding being requested. So don't take this entry on the project data form lightly. To recap, choose the correct ATE funding track. Don't report something on the project data form that isn't included in your project description. Be thoughtful in estimating the project's potential impact on students, teachers, and others. And you don't have to anticipate impact in every sector. However, please note that students and teachers definitely are most important. Include institutional partners. They actually strengthen your proposal. And again, don't worry about NSF strategic areas. They aren't directly applicable to ATE. And so now we are open up for questions.
Okay. Emery, I don't know if you've seen any questions. I had one sent to me in the private chat, and it's going on who can upload and complete the forms in research.gov. Is it only the PI, or how does that work? And Matthew, do you want to take that question?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. So usually it depends on which individuals have been granted access to the proposal record. You can, if you're the PI, I think it might be something that AOR can do as well, grant access to other individuals who are sort of called OAUs or other authorized users. And this is a valuable feature that I think is often underutilized in research.gov, especially now that it uses multi-factor authentication. So you can't just, not that you should, but you can't just use somebody's login name and password in order to access a proposal record to work on it. So I think that it's really beneficial to think about the folks on your team who you would like to have contributing to your proposal rather than having one person be the solely responsible person for inputting everything, as that adds a valuable level of redundancy and also gives you the chance to let other people actually look at the proposal documents in research.gov live and, check for errors or make changes, give feedback on that basis rather than having to download documents and then send them out to them for review.
And Cassandra asked if we had the link on how to do that, and I don't have it right off. I know that when I added someone in mine, it was going under your proposal, and on the left-hand side of the screen, you could add people for it. So I am not logged into research.gov right now, but it is fairly self-explanatory. Or as we looked at it, I think Matthew said he's also looking up when he's not presenting. So we'll try to get it for you or send it to you otherwise. And someone is asking they missed at the beginning, are we going to send out the slides? And yes, we will have the slides sent out, and we also will have a recording of this available afterwards. So you will be able to review, and our tutorial that we will have, quick reference guide, is absolutely wonderful because it has the slides in and annotated that you can scroll through the pages very easily to have what we are doing for it. And another question that came to me is that downward flow of students. So Lewis, I'm really doing a training for 5 instructors. How do I calculate how many students are going to be impacted from that?
Well, that's quite interesting. So the first thing I would do is just think about the content of the professional development that I'm involving the instructors in. And again, also the types of courses that they're going to be teaching. And for example, if the professional development has to involve like teaching methodologies, then for instance, what I would think about is the impact that would have on the students that are in those classes that those instructors are actually teaching, whether or not the instructor is actually a member of your ATE project or not. And then just look at the average teaching load of those classes. And from that, we should be able to perform our calculations.
And if your school is like mine, when I taught, our class size was maybe 25 students. And I, as a professor, was teaching 4 or 5 classes. So that means each semester I might be impacting 150 students. And so if I did training just as one person, it might have had over a 2-year period an impact of 300 students. And then if 5 people got the training you were using, you can see where your numbers could add up very fast. And Matthew, thank you. Isn't Google or researching wonderful to be able to find out how to add people or change them? And I think actually time is going really fast. So if you have questions, please add them in it. Otherwise, Matthew, you're going to talk about, I was going to make a joke and say, oh, that thing you don't have to worry about of your one-page summary, but you're going to tell people why it's very important.
Yeah, I was actually corrected in this regard a couple years ago, doing another webinar where it was pointed out that the project summary is a document that is repeatedly referenced by all kinds of different audiences in the course of reviewing your ATE proposal. It's read during the review panel, during post-panel discussions that are comparing competitive proposals, and even during the award process. So it's easy to kind of dismiss the project summary as a technicality or something that you kind of dash off at the last minute. But I would encourage you not to do so. In many ways, it's like the elevator pitch for your whole proposal. The project summary can't exceed 1 page. The heading for each section has to be on its own line with no other text on that line. Each section must include an overview or description of the activity that would result if the proposal were funded and a statement of the objectives or methods to be used. Again, this is like your elevator speech. If this is all someone reads about your project, they should know what you're trying to do and your desired outcomes. It should clearly indicate the disciplinary focus of your project, the kinds of activities that are proposed, and the primary audience or audiences for your proposal. You need to get right to the point. Explain your project's objectives and what you'll do to achieve those objectives. As a general rule, try to avoid using this space to present a rationale for your project, describe your college or your service area, or state how much money that you're requesting. This is kind of a just the facts document. When you're addressing intellectual merit and broader impacts, be sure you understand what NSF means by those terms by studying the criteria provided in the ATE program solicitation and the PAPPG. The ATE program solicitation further clarifies how these merit review criteria apply to ATE proposals. You don't have to address all the criteria listed by NSF in the ATE program, but you should plan to align with at least some of what's been provided to prospective grantees. The statement on intellectual merit should describe the potential of proposed activities to advance knowledge. Be as specific as possible to clarify your project's distinctive contribution to the field. The statement on broader impacts should describe the potential of the proposed activity to benefit society. Again, be specific on your project's anticipated impact. Regional economic needs, industries, disciplines, affected populations, etc. Now, broader impact statements for past ATE projects have historically used many terms that are affected by recent or current executive orders. NSF's current guidance to applicants recommends focusing on the substance of your proposal instead of trying to avoid specific keywords. MentorConnect's following this topic, and we don't have insight beyond what's been communicated to the general public. For the time being, keep in mind that you'll probably write the project abstract after you've completed other proposal documents. So we have time to wait and watch relevant websites for clarification over the coming months. And Pam added a link in the chat to a couple of those websites that you can monitor for the latest and greatest updates from NSF. Examples of questions you can address in your proposals regarding the merit review criteria taken straight from the ATE program solicitation include, for intellectual merit, does a project have the potential to improve student learning in science or engineering technician education programs with detailed goals, objectives, and activities? Is the rationale for selecting particular activities or components for development or adaptation clearly articulated and informed by the research literature? Does the work build on that base and the work of others? For broader impacts, has an assessment of workforce needs for technicians been conducted? Does a project work with employers to address their current and future needs for technicians? And does a project promote the participation of the full spectrum of diverse talent that society has to offer in the technical workforce? Be sure to pay close attention to these when you're crafting your intellectual merit and broader impact statements. In general, remember, a project summary is your elevator speech. It makes your proposal's first impression. Intellectual merit and broader impacts should be developed for your project in the context of NSF's and ATE programs' definitions of these terms. Use these sections to feed review panelists key points on your project's intellectual merit and broader impacts for reviewers to cite when they summarize your proposal in the reviews that they'll submit to NSF program officers. Basically, make their jobs as easy as possible, and they'll reward you for it. Don't wait until the very end of your proposal development process to write your project summary when you're harried or rushed or tired. It'll reflect your emotional state and may undermine your proposal's competitiveness. Now, when you cite materials in your project narrative, you're required to list your source material in a separate references cited document and not in your project description. NSF expects you to do some research in the process of developing a grant proposal. Like most funding sources, they encourage the use of research-based strategies and adapting pre-existing resources, interventions, etc., created by other NSF-funded projects. Your references show that you aren't reinventing the wheel and that you'll proactively make use of existing knowledge and assets in your field. Cite references that explain why you chose particular strategies, curriculum, teaching methodologies, or other approaches to address your challenges in education. In other words, why you chose these tools and they're the best tools to do the job. New AI tools like Google's Notebook LM can help you to synthesize data from multiple studies that you've collected, as well as other sources like recorded lectures and presentations, which is pretty exciting. Reference citations are also where you provide the sources of data that you cite in your project description's motivating rationale or results of prior support sections. Use citation management tools like Zotero, Mendeley, or EndNote to help you to manage and format your references. And be judicious. Cite at least 5 significant references to show you've done your homework. Avoid gratuitously citing sources, though. Quality is more important here than quantity. We discourage using automated endnotes. As you include information from your research, you want to manually number your references throughout the project description. Then you'll prepare a separate document with numbered citations in the sequence to match. References do not count toward your 15-page limit. They should follow accepted scholarly citation styles like APA or MLA, and they should consistently use the same style. Avoid the use of the et al. Abbreviation if there are many authors, unless it's a very large consortium paper. And curate your sources to strengthen your credibility. For example, by citing labor market data from a government agency or a study published in a peer-reviewed academic journal, such as the Journal of ATE. Put another way, how much credibility would you give a paper if the author cited a newspaper editorial or Wikipedia? There are some interesting new, what's called deep research AI tools that are useful to assist you if you recognize their limitations. For example, they're typically unable to access articles that are hidden behind paywalls, like most journals do. So recognize that they're not going to present you with a comprehensive research analysis or literature review. Louis is now going to talk about facilities, equipment, and other resources.
Great. So thank you, Matthew. So facilities, equipment, and other resources. And you'll see this form, and this form is used to describe any internal and external resources that the organization and its collaborators will provide to the project should it be funded. The information provided in this form should be narrative in nature and not include any quantifiable financial information. It is designed to assess the adequacy of the organizational resources available to perform the proposed project. It also provides an opportunity to explain the infrastructure, laboratories, and equipment at your institution, and perhaps at partners' locations that will be available for use to support the success of the project. And we ask you to keep in mind that you shouldn't use this form to describe all the capabilities of your college. You're going to be real busy. Only use those that are relevant to the project to help NSF assess the resources available. And lastly, photographs of physical space and equipment is not allowable. So here we have some examples of items to include in this information, and that is, for example, your laboratory support, which is often quite important for the successful implementation of an ATE grant. If this is the case for your project, you will want to describe your current capability, even if the proposal includes some improvements or equipment additions. Then we talk about computer capability, which can also be essential for your grant, especially if the project focuses on IT, information technology, cybersecurity, and any number of other advanced technologies that are computer dependent and will make use of the computing capability and computer labs at your institution. Office support is also important to describe, since budget guidelines specifically state that grant budgets may not include office furnishings or the everyday office equipment such as computers, copiers, and items that support normal office operation. The personnel implementing the grant, however, will need office support to do so. If your institution is providing dedicated office space, access to administrative support, or similar, this is a good place to make a statement about that support. And then major equipment. Advanced technology programs are very often equipment intensive. Your institution may have major equipment that will be used in implementing the grant. Or you may have a partner institution or industry working with the project and providing major equipment for your students. That would be nice. Perhaps you have a university or industry partner with an electron microscope or a clean room that will be used for teaching your students. If major equipment like this is involved in the success of your project, this is the place where you can describe the availability of these resources being provided by an industry or an education partner. You can also describe resources other than facilities and equipment, such as personnel support. You should include any senior personnel or postdoctoral researchers for whom no funds are being requested in the budget. This is also a place where you can describe the talent you have assembled to serve as an internal advisory committee. Or perhaps you have a college recruiter lined up who will support the outreach activities of the grant, but who will not receive compensation from the grant for doing so. In other words, if someone will be working to support the project without compensation, this is the place to describe that donated time. But don't assign monetary value to the donated time or state a specific time commitment. You don't have to do that. Be sure to highlight the essential physical spaces and virtual tools that will support the success of your project. This includes both physical spaces such as classrooms, labs, computer labs, and virtual tools like software, online platforms, and databases. It's important to only list resources that are directly relevant to the project's needs. For example, if there is any specialized equipment or tools that are critical for the project's success, be sure to mention them here. And finally, be sure to explain how these facilities and resources will actively support your project's goals, ensuring that all elements work together to drive the desired outcomes. Also, make sure that make sure that you see the link that has been included regarding a coffee break on this same topic, and it should be in the chat there. And so now Matthew is going to share with us on data management plans.
Kyle, so including a data management and sharing plan is not only a requirement for ATE proposals, but it's an item that's specifically reviewed in the review process. This plan must be tailored to your project. Watch out for copy and pasted generic plans. Also, refer to NSS guidance on plans that are submitted to the Directorate for STEM Education, which includes the ATE program. This guidance can be used to double-check your plan before it's submitted. You'll need to prepare a document of no more than 2 pages, labeled Data Management and Sharing Plan. The form should not be used to circumvent the project description's 15-page limit. It should describe how your proposal will conform to NSF policy on the dissemination and sharing of your project's results. Basically, NSF expects you to share the outcomes of your work. PIs are expected to share primary data, samples, and supporting materials from their grant projects. Your plan will be reviewed as part of the intellectual merit and/or broader impacts of your proposal. Your data management and sharing plan should specify the types of data and other materials or products that will be generated or collected by the project, how data will be stored, protected, and appropriately shared, how what's generated by the project will be preserved during and beyond the project, and how others will be able to access the project's products. Start out by identifying the types of data, samples, physical collections, software, curriculum, other projects that will be produced during your project. Be specific about what will be generated. In terms of data standards, specify the standards that will be used for the data and metadata format and content. If it's applicable, identify the relevant standards that align with the kind of data you're handling. Addressing gaps in standards. Where existing standards are absent or inadequate, it's important to document this and propose some kind of solutions or remedies. This helps to ensure consistency and clarity in how data is handled. Outline the policies for data access and sharing, including how you protect privacy, confidentiality, security, intellectual property, if that's pertinent, and other rights or requirements. Clearly state your policies for reuse, redistribution, and the production of derivatives. This ensures that data and materials can be leveraged beyond the initial scope of your project. And last, describe your plans on how you're going to archive data, samples, and other research products. This includes ensuring long-term access and preserving the integrity of your data over time. By addressing these items, your data management and sharing plan will ensure that your product's data are managed effectively, ethically, and sustainably. This sample data management plan was prepared for a small Track 1 grant. MentorConnect also has sample proposals in our online resource collection, which are really useful examples of data management plans. And NSF has a detailed FAQ on data management plans. You'll see the URL right there on the slide. In summary, here are some key takeaways for an effective data management and sharing plan. If you're using a specific storage platform, be sure to include key details, such as the name of the repository, how data will be uploaded, and the timeline for how and when data will be made available to the general public. This is for transparency and accessibility. Your data management plan should be flexible enough to adapt to changes in project needs, new technologies, or evolving data sharing requirements. You can't foresee all of these developments during the entire duration of your project. Keep in mind, reviewers will evaluate the quality, feasibility, and alignment of your data management and sharing plan with your overall proposal. A poorly written plan could negatively impact your proposal's chance of success. So be sure to provide clear, concise, and well thought out details. And last, if it's applicable, include any costs associated with storing, organizing, or sharing data within your project's budget. This makes sure data management is adequately funded, isn't just an afterthought, and this won't hamper your overall project budget. Lewis is now going to talk about supplementary documents.
Thank you again, Matthew.
Sure.
And so those supplementary documents are listed as optional. They're not for the ATE program. They're definitely required. And so there are 2 required supplemental documents for ATE. So we have the letters of collaboration. Letters of collaboration are required throughout the ATE program solicitation. And this is a good example of where the PAPG and the ATE program solicitation differ. In the case where these documents differ, please make note that you will follow the ATE program solicitation, which requires letters of collaboration. The key word here is collaboration. Reviewers want to see documentation of the commitments described in the proposal, such as a letter from an industry partner pledging resources or time to the project. Letters should outline specific collaborations, partnerships, or resources pledged to the project, and not merely be letters of support. Letters that just endorse the project or offer non-specific support should not be included. And if you do, your chances are your proposal will be returned without review. That's a bad feeling. The ATE proposal solicitation also asks that you include a biosketch of the external evaluator as a supplemental document if that person is named in the project description. So this slide here outlines the importance of letters of collaboration in your proposal. First of all, we have the required content. Letters of collaboration must clearly describe the expected contributions, roles, and responsibilities of each partner involved in the project or center. These letters should provide specific details on how each partner will actively contribute to the success of the project. And then you want to avoid non-specific letters. That is, letters that only endorse the project or offer non-specific support for project activities should definitely be avoided. These types of letters do not add value to the proposal and fail to clarify the partner's commitment to the project. And then we look at the impact on the proposal. So including letters of support that do not meet these requirements may result in the proposal being returned without review. It's critical to ensure the letters are detailed and clearly outline the partners or collaborators' involvement. By ensuring your letters of collaboration are well written and aligned with these guidelines, you'll help strengthen your proposal and avoid potential issues during the review process. So takeaways regarding the letters of collaboration. When preparing letters of collaboration, we ask you to keep the following points in mind. Send unique drafts to each partner. Always send unique draft letters to each partner. And these drafts should be tailored to reflect their specific contributions and role within the project. Allow your partners to sign or adjust the letters as needed. And please start early. This process can take time, so it's important to start early to ensure you have enough time for revisions and to secure all necessary signatures. You know, most people in the industry are busy. Be thoughtful. Focus on quality or over quantity when gathering letters. A few detailed, well-crafted letters are far more valuable than multiple generic ones. Ensure each letter clearly outlines the partner's commitment and role in the project. And I'll say this again, be sure that each letter outlines the partner's commitment and their role in the project. And so by following these guidelines, you'll ensure that your letters of collaboration, we keep saying it because sometimes people will say, I have to give a letter of support and they get off track. But we want to make sure that your letters of collaboration, they're strong, clear, and aligned with the project's goals. And so now we will open up the floor for questions.
Okay, thank you very much, Lewis and Matthew, for great information. I am going to ask Emery if she'll pop up the webinar evaluation for you to answer for you all to complete as we answer the questions. We are at our hour mark and I don't want people to leave without completing it. And it is 5 questions, so make sure you scroll down. One of the questions was asked of if the biosketch of the evaluator goes through SCI-ENCV. First of all, if any of you are going, what is she talking about of SCI-ENCV? We're going to cover that at our May webinar on the personnel forms. But no, the evaluator biosketch is a separate document that goes into these supplemental documents for it. So it is that the evaluator can give the biosketch that they're used to doing with more details related to it. As the Matthew, you mentioned that people should probably have at least 5 references. Is there any magic of when it becomes too much?
That's a really good question. I think that sort of quality over quantity principle is a good one because if someone wants, say a reviewer decides to review your references cited, think about what you want them to see. You know, if you have 100 references, chances are they're not going to make much of a collective impact. So I think if you want to impress reviewers with the fact that you've been thoughtful and scrupulous and reasonably comprehensive in terms of the references that you're citing, curating them to have that effect is a really good rule of thumb. If you find you're just kind of spamming citations in an effort to validate every assertion that you make in your proposal, I think that that can actually weaken the effectiveness of your references, because anything that you want to stand out to reviewers will just get lost in the soup.
You know, I've served as a reviewer. I can say that generally over the past, but I have actually, if someone has too many references, I start to look at them and go, wait, why did they include that? That is ridiculous. And I start looking at years. So yet the quality over quantity is very important for it. Someone asked if there's a page limit for the letters of collaboration. Matthew, you're unmuted, or Lewis, do one of you want to take that? And Lewis is muted, so we'll read his lips.
Sorry. I can give a quick answer.
Okay.
There's not a page limit, but again, the same principle applies. So, I think you want to ensure that key partners, say making sure there's a letter from your institution demonstrating that it's institutionally committed to your project success. If you're citing non-college partners that are going to be very important to your project, making sure that there are letters from them. Again, that principle, I think, also holds true with regard to letters of commitment. This is not like a Department of Labor proposal, for example, where sometimes it feels like you really are being asked to provide just a multitude of letters to demonstrate this huge base of support for your project. I'd say with ATE, you want to show that when you're talking about employer engagement, for example, that's documented and you're not simply asserting it. But at the same time, that doesn't mean that you need to get 30 letters from employers in order to make your case, in part because if you go down that road, you run the risk of letters that look too similar to one another. And that is something reviewers can really catch on if they feel as though they're seeing letter after letter that have almost identical wording, and you're just swapping out the address blocks. Because to them, that's actually evidence that you probably don't genuinely have commitment from those parties. And all they were asked to do was add their signatures to a form letter.
And I will say that two questions come up that, first of all, someone wanted to verify that they do submit each of these documents on the link that we showed on that cover page. And yes, you'll do the cover page, and then it will show that the form is completed for that one, or will show that the document is uploaded. So that beginning screen, you are submitting everything individually and separately. So it is nice because it shows you how it's been uploaded, but you are not creating one great big document. Now, the only thing that you might create one big document for is your supplemental. You can create a single PDF that has all your cover letters in it and your bio sketch from your evaluator. I don't know if it's required, but you can do it that way and have it created as a document. Connie asked if we had anything about any recent orders, and we know as much as you do. I know that what I have heard from program officers for other solicitations is follow the solicitation and what it says right now. And if there are changes, we put the 2 links in of where changes are getting completed for it. And we do have that about 10 of you have not completed the evaluation form yet. Obviously, I don't know which 10 of you it is, but please, getting feedback is what Dr. Celeste Carter says the so what question about it. We offered something, so what, or how does it help for people? And I don't know, Emery, if you can go ahead and go on to the next one. And just the reminder, there are a lot of forms, so do start early. Don't be afraid to ask questions. If you're in cohort 13, Mentor Connect, you'll have a mentor. Otherwise, if you ask Mentor Connect a question, otherwise we'll try to answer it or refer you to the right source in our resource library, which is mentor-connect.org. And if you click under the resources, the library has a lot of this information, and research.gov provides a lot of help for things. So do get advice and get help early. And we do want to remind you that look at the PAPG. I have to say, my first grant, I was totally unaware of this document, and it was luckily someone clued me in about a week before. So you want to pay attention to font sizes. You don't want to add page numbers now, which is really hard when you're looking at your document. And you will be uploading files that are uploaded as PDFs with a maximum file size of 10 megabytes for it. And we hope you will join us for other webinars. We are with CCPI is going to be doing a webinar on Friday, April 25th. That one does start at 2 p.m. Eastern time, I believe, on using AI. And then we are going to have a budget and budget justification and a personnel documents. And we are having a webinar on June 18th that will probably go a little bit more into the project description and things to include with that. So do want to encourage you to attend any of our webinars. And the next slide reminds you to complete the evaluation. So thanks for all of doing that. Here's a way that you can connect with us, including a QR code. If you send us an email, that is going to be the fastest way. As you know, many people work remote nowadays, so that phone in the office can sometimes get a message added into it. Otherwise, we do want to thank everyone for attending. And Matthew or Lewis, do you have any last words, or have I missed anything in the questions?
No, I think you've done well. Jamel had a question regarding where can help be provided with each one of the steps. And I think you covered that regarding having access to a mentor or reaching out to our website.
And, Daphne made a point about sort of having conversation with the program officer about using, what the administration's terming quote unquote DEI language. I think it's useful to keep in mind that this is a rapidly evolving topic, and, there are a lot of influences upon it, including, current legal actions. So thankfully, we've got a few months before the AT submission deadline. And so I'd say, there's a current state and the guidance that even NSF program officers are receiving, but that in itself could change potentially significantly between now and October. So it's important to kind of keep an eye on the actual guidance that, say, the NSF Executive Order webpage is providing, to make sure that when you're thinking about how to address a topic like this, you're doing so in the context of the latest and greatest guidance, rather than acting based off of the suspicion, for example, that isn't necessarily substantiated or may not even be current. Not to dismiss your concern. I think that's a valid concern.
And it's a valid concern, and we're keeping updated. But remember that ATE is about providing a more skilled technician workforce. So really look at what is needed in your area. And if it's more technicians, it might be that you're just focusing on recruiting more technicians, or you might be focusing on groups. If it's to teach them something about cybercrime, that's still cyber technology. You're still going to be doing that. So I think we are very fortunate within the ATE community that we are working at putting out a more skilled technician workforce. And that is something that it's harder for people to argue against that than other things, I guess. I'll leave it at that. So thanks to everyone. Emery, you can stop the recording now, and we are finished. But if anyone does still have questions or anything, definitely put them in the chat. Otherwise, thank you all very much for attending.